How's it going, Woods and Forests media community? We are back for another episode of the CCH podcast. Of course, we have a guest who was already on this season, but it's that time of the year and it's his time to shine, along with all the photography and amazing birding that's going to come out of all of this. So we have, of course, Alex coming back. There's probably still going to be some people who might not be familiar with you from the previous episode. I had to go the whole way back and look. It was like 4 or 5 months ago. Ironically, it feels like it was just yesterday. But if you just want to kind of go on and introduce yourself briefly, and we could kind of get into the exciting birding season that's going on right now.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for having me on again, Aaron. Yeah, my name is Alex Busato. I am the president of the Westmoreland Bird and Nature Club. I am a science teacher, middle school science teacher at the Valley School of Ligonier, and very into birding, very into pretty much all things nature, and I do a lot of amateur wildlife photography as well. So yeah, Aaron asked me to be on, talk a little bit about some of the migrations that are coming up here in spring, and looking forward to talking about it.
If you're saying it's amateur photography, like what are you suggesting is semi-pro then?
Well, I don't get paid for it, so that would be my cutoff, I guess. Thank you. Yeah, I've the market's pretty tough to break into with sales, so I can't say I've really tried too much, but yeah. So
If
it's
you
it's a
went to
good hobby.
festivals, you'd probably be able to sell them.
Yeah, I've considered it. There's the thing that's holding me back right now is just like the hassle of making like an official small business, getting the tax information all squared up. Um, just haven't had the time. But now that I'm teaching, maybe in the summers or something, I can one of these days get that worked out.
I have a
So
great idea for you. I'm going to pitch it to you to help you make money.
yeah.
So, like, what if you do the Westmoreland Bird and Nature Club? Sorry, there's a couple of
Hmm.
groups that I know. Anyway, Westmoreland Bird and Nature Club. Hear me out, like a calendar, and you could like have your birds. You could also get herps and other creatures too. It'd
Yeah.
be crazy to see if you could get a bear, if you can get like a deer, but
Yeah, not a bad idea. I've done calendars in the past that I've sold like through my Instagram, just like a few of them. And this year just didn't with, being a new teacher, just kind of didn't align, but I definitely would like to get back into it. I had a few people that'd be like, "Oh, are you making a calendar this year?" And I'm like, "No, sorry, but next year." So,
you could
we're just
test the
saving up
water.
some good shots. So,
Yeah, you could test the water and see like maybe for membership people buy one.
yeah, it'd be a good like gift with membership even.
See that,
So,
ladies and gentlemen? That's how the moment was born that he became a semi-pro.
there you go.
So, yeah, let's get in and talk about the exciting migration that's happening. So I am by far not a bird expert, so it's always exciting to learn about stuff that you're not as familiar with. So just share with us some of the species. You can give us whatever you want, scientific name and common name, or whatever you want, but just let the viewers know kind of like what's going on right now in this neck of Pennsylvania.
Yeah. So Pennsylvania and a lot of the eastern seaboard here, like we're situated along some fairly major flyways along the Appalachian region when it comes to songbirds. So right now we are transitioning out of our like winter species. So a lot of the things that have come down for the winter. Some of our waterfowl, some of like our finches. We didn't have a really great year for finches this year, and some of our owls. They're going to be moving northwards soon, if not already. And then we're primed for a lot of our songbirds to return from the neotropics. So I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I would wager that over half of the birds that breed in Pennsylvania are migratory out of the country or at least out of the state. And so we're going to be seeing big pushes of different groups. Um, right now, we're sort of in the midst of and nearing the tail end of our waterfowl migration. We had sort of a weird year for it this year because so many of the lakes were frozen. And they'll usually kind of push southward until they're past that freeze line. But now, like since they thought, a lot of people have been seeing a lot of good stuff. We've had some tundra swans in large numbers. We've had a lot of duck variety. I think one of the days when right after the lakes had first thawed, a couple weeks ago, I was out on Green Lake Run Reservoir in Fayette County, and I had about like 12 different duck species. Over like 200 individuals, so they're moving through in big numbers. And as we get consistently warmer weather and that extending northward, they're going to kind of follow that pattern up north. And then yeah, we'll be getting into some of our songbirds. It starts out with a lot of like the short distance migrants. Red-winged blackbirds, they're kind of here year round, but they leave a lot of their habitats in the winter months, and they kind of congregate in these big flocks. But recently, with like especially the past few days, with the really warm temps we've been having, I've seen a lot of red-winged blackbirds out, like singing on territory, trying to get their little corner of the marsh set up for breeding season. So that's pretty cool. That's always a nice sign of spring when they start singing. And then yeah, we'll continue. We'll start to get some others like catbirds are an early one back. Um, we'll start seeing a lot more robins. They don't really ever leave either, but they're kind of short distance and they become more obvious this time of year. And then as we move into April, that's when we start to get sort of the bigger push of the songbirds, starting with some early warbler species, um, like scarlet tanagers and rose-breasted grosbeaks also. And then by the time May comes, that's sort of the peak, with like the majority of the ones coming into the state. This is also for those of you that might not be as familiar with birding. Um, May is sort of like prime time here in Pennsylvania because a lot of the birds that migrate through our state don't stay in our state all summer. So we sort of have two windows each year. We have like first week or two of May, and then I would say the fall migration is a little more drawn out, but it's probably like early to mid September through early October is sort of when that window comes. But there's some species that's about the only time you can get them in the state. So it really picks up this time of year and kind of goes crazy. Also, the spring is usually more favored because the birds are in their bright, flashy breeding plumage, whereas in the fall they kind of dull out a little bit more. So for me, it's a really exciting time for like photography too, because trying to get good shots of as many different species as I can, right? You got to be out as much as you possibly can during those windows to try to catch the ones. I mean, sometimes they'll just be a few days and then, you won't see them anymore in your region. So, yeah. With the Bird and Nature Club, we have a lot of outings planned for the next couple of months. This next quarter, this is like our busiest quarter because everybody's excited that the cold is finally gone. They're itching to be outside, and then also the birds are kind of at their peak. So we're pretty excited for this upcoming season, and I'm definitely excited. I this is a longer winter than I'm used to this year, so the seasonal depression is lifting, and we're feeling good. So
Very well explained. So there are so many seasons that are going on. For people that aren't familiar with Pennsylvania, or even if you are and you're not aware of like what's happening. So birding is huge, the migration pattern following that. Also, of course, the frogs and toads, like that's, I don't want to say the peak because there are certain species that are gone, but for the majority of the state, most of them are still breeding in May. April, May, June are like the real important months. Really, May is that month. But then I'm also aware of some hunters that go shed hunting and stuff, and like May is pretty much the like I don't want to say the peak, but it's like after May, then they kind of lose the opportunity to do that. So there's like this huge scramble in the state. What shed hunting is big in Pennsylvania. Birding
wild
is
ramps,
wild
another
ramp
one.
hunting,
I
yeah.
always look forward to wild ramp season too.
Mushroom hunting,
Hmm.
yeah. So like we got a lot of different things to offer. Of course, there's always your typical fishing and stuff. Not trying to throw shade. I'm just saying though, like, we got all these different things going on, and it's cool to get different perspectives. People are all running to try to basically run a different race in May, and it's really cool having the opportunity to just hear what somebody else is doing. Like, what is another group doing? Whenever you might be pursuing birds, like what do the shed hunters do, or what, like how's that work, or
Mhm.
like foraging, or like what I do. It's really interesting to
Yeah.
hear because, like, you're out usually during the day, maybe like the crack of dawn to
Hmm.
get your stuff, and I'm out like sunset to the whole night.
Yeah.
So like it's just different, and I don't know
Mhm.
what shed hunters are doing. I think they're probably out. I mean, they're probably out more when it's winter time because they could see the antlers better if
Yeah,
they drop
probably
them.
now.
Yeah.
I would before that leafs in a lot, I would imagine.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
So just interesting to hear all the different perspectives, and I'm sure that the Bird and Nature Club has all of that to offer with so many people having diverse backgrounds. Of course, it's about
Mhm.
birds, but like you guys are so open to so many different adventures. I mean, we're gonna have a frog walk. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited for that. Yeah, I know. I mean, we have like, I mean, that's the and nature part, right? Like, I think it was founded because I like birding is such a it's birding as a hobby. I think attracts a lot more people to start. It's like more of a concrete thing for a lot of folks for whatever reason. Like there's guidebooks directly for it, and like there's a community that's built around it that's a little more cohesive, I think, than some of the other ones. Like and so I imagine it started around that, but like we have some people that are just absolute experts on like wildflowers. That's another thing that we try to highlight in some of our spring outings is like the spring ephemeral wildflowers. I mean, we have so many different varieties of wildflower. I forget the exact number, but it's like it's in the hundreds of different wildflower species in our state. And some of them are only out like right now. Snow trillium, one of the earliest blooming flowers we have. Um, they're probably either like at their peak or just past their peak at this point. The little colder year this year probably put them later, but I remember last year we had them in like late February. And so like there's a lot of places for those, and like the people in the club, you have folks that know exactly where different species are. This year, one of our outings is not completely centered, but it's intentionally centered on a population of toadshade trillium, which is kind of like locally rare. There's going to be plenty of birds and plenty of other things to see too, but like that's why we chose the spot we did at the time we did, because there's a big, huge thing of toadshade there, which is a pretty cool looking wildflower. It's one of my favorites around here. It's just very unique. Um, so yeah, I mean, it like you said, it is interesting to see all the different communities. And as somebody like myself who is interested in all of it to some degree, like it's tough to prioritize, right, between birding and right now this time of year, in March, I'm lucky that a lot of the birds haven't quite gotten here yet because I can focus on trying to get some of the earliest amphibian activity too, because I do love the herps. And um, yeah, I saw my first wood frogs of the season like 2 days ago. The peepers are out, and hoping, fingers crossed, for some salamanders soon. Um, but yeah, so it's tough to diversify, but it's also it's a great time of year. So
You're much further southwest than I am because we haven't had anything. I have a friend who,
oh really?
like 2 weeks ago, saw one wood frog, but I've been out 4 straight nights and there's no sign of any frogs,
Hmm.
no calls. Yeah, and it's like been in the 50s and 60s, but nothing. So
Interesting.
some of
Yeah,
the stuff is still frozen though.
oh really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, ours is pretty much all thawed, even up in the mount, like on the ridge, where I'm looking. But yeah, I mean, I went last week, and I think I went last week right after we had like a little rain, and just checked to see if there was any activity. It was still a little bit colder overnight temps, but there really wasn't anything. And now it's like fairly dry, but there's a few spots of more permanent wetland that they're in, especially the peepers and the wood frogs. But I think the salamanders are probably holding out for um, some bigger rains that hopefully we'll have here in the near future, and we can catch them out with that. So,
You know what I find fascinating? The salamanders in my neck of the woods, the spotted salamanders, almost have their own season when it's like they're guaranteed to come out. Here, they
hmm,
come out after the wood frogs. They come out after the beginning of the spring peepers. So
hmm,
it's like the spotted salamanders and the pickerel frogs come out just around the same time, maybe a little bit before the pickerel frogs. And like
interesting.
they might come out around the same time as the American toads, like very beginning. So it's
Hmm.
really interesting because you might see, depending on the season, I have seen like spotted salamanders, wood frogs, and American toads in the same vernal pool. And
Oh
like
wow.
around here in this specific region, like that's not typical from what I've seen at the other vernal pools. The
Yeah.
150 miles that I cover, I don't normally run into that.
Yeah.
So it's really fun, but it's really surprising because a lot of people see spotted salamanders that are much more cold tolerant. So it's just interesting that where I'm at, I'm not saying they're not cold tolerant, but they're not coming out immediately. Like you're going to see them before
Yeah.
I will.
Hmm.
It's just interesting.
Yeah, maybe it's something to do with like soil geology or something along those lines. Like I don't know. I know I've actually never seen one local to my area, which I'm like Westmoreland, Fayette County. But back in college, I saw a lot in like Bald Eagle State Forest area. And they were out, I had them I think one year like March 2nd. You'd see your breath at night when you were out on the vernal pools looking for them, and they were those in the Jefferson salamanders were out with them. There were a lot of Jeffersons out there, and we had some really big nights that were very cold. And so, yeah, it is interesting. I wonder if it's something to do with, yeah, either just certain populations having more tolerance or something to do with, yeah, soil geology or whatever. But a lot of
So
factors, I'm sure.
from my observational data, I could tell you it seems that spotted salamanders like coming out whenever it's misty and rainy between the 40s and low 50s,
Hmm.
and they seem to really move around a lot during that period of time. Before we're getting to the 60s, they really seem to be active, like when the pickerel frogs are upper
Hmm.
40s, mid 50s. But I also think that there's meta populations that just have different preferences.
Yeah.
Because wood frogs, I follow multiple populations. There's one population every year for 5 years now that comes out after everybody else. It's like 2 weeks after the season,
Hmm.
and they're booming down there. Everywhere else, they're gone. They're completely gone.
Interesting.
So it's just,
Yeah.
yeah, you wouldn't think that, but maybe that's what it is. It's just specific populations.
Yeah.
Maybe it had to do with traffic or it had to do with avoiding a predator or
Hmm.
different
Yeah.
cold tolerance. But
Well, yeah, and
um,
I mean like the nature of vernal pool breeding, like it would, it's isolated breeding
yeah.
population. So like that you would think that, sort of microevolution scale could affect things over time for their exact locations. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah, we'll see what I can come up with for data for that. But you
Yeah.
were saying about birding. I think birding is just, it's probably the most well established of all of them. Outside of
Hmm.
like hunting and fishing, I do think birding
Yeah.
would be number three because they make cameras like we've talked about. They make lenses. Literally, they say for birding. Or like
Yeah.
when I look at the new AI settings on the cameras, it's like animal, and then there's people, and then there's bird. Like
Yeah, it's
bird
like
has its
bird
own
eye
section.
tracking.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen that too. And I'm like, yeah, I feel like whenever I see all these things, I feel like I'm shooting like on like a potato or something with like I mean, I have a lot of settings, but I like don't, I can't imagine what it would be like for my autofocus to like actually work the way I want it to, because it never does. So, yeah, but it's pretty cool. And yeah, you're right. Like I think it's like a $40 billion industry,
It's
like
massive.
globally. Like it's huge. And it's getting bigger too because of well, social media and different groups forming. And I think the pandemic really brought a lot of people into it because they were just stuck at home and watching their bird feeders, and they're like, hey, I wonder what that is. And so like I know that there have been articles written about that, like a big spike in the hobby after the pandemic and with young people too. I mean, I got into it during the pandemic myself. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that herping is. I think that birding is birding. I think when it comes to mind of what birding is, like everybody has a good idea, but herping
Hmm.
is so different to everybody. I think it's not
Hmm.
as well defined because what some people might be calling herping is they're literally going out flipping rocks. Some people go herping and they're literally going out to take pictures. And then you have
Hmm.
some people who are on like the state survey and they're herping to go out and get data.
Yeah.
Whereas like your birding, it's usually meant for photography. Doesn't mean you're not posting it to like iNaturalist or something, but
Hmm.
it's not quite like it's more solidified, I think. And um, even with where I'm at, I don't even know that I call it herping at this point because like there's just it's a mouth sandwich of like what I'm trying to do, so I can't
Yeah.
even really describe it. And I
Yeah.
don't want to do that to the viewers or you because I respect everybody's time. But I'm just saying I do, and I think that's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that at all. That
Yeah.
herping is so different, and but it's also more niche. It's not quite as popular, but even
Hmm.
if it was, like what would we really think of it as? So.
Yeah.
It's just really interesting to kind of think of that. And even with what I do is even more niche because it's like how many people are going out to like manage certain populations and then build habitats and find
Hmm.
places that'll take wounded ones and call vets that'll treat wounded ones.
Hmm.
Excuse me. Um, and just do all this different stuff for them. So like,
Yeah.
how do I call that herping? It's like, how do you explain
Yeah.
that? Like, it's
Well,
so
it's
different.
it's a passion, right? And it manifests in a lot of different ways. I mean, like, yeah, like birding, definitely your average person is either in it to either like boost their life list, or um take photos. I would say like that's probably the biggest two. Like I know a lot of birders that aren't photographers and they're just out there to see them. A lot of like the older school ones, a lot of the newer birders, I would say, go hand in hand with the photography. I mean, myself included. And then they still do the life listing and things like that and seeking them out, but the photography is also like right there with them, for a lot of folks. And yeah, but like also, I mean, there's a lot of like bird science initiatives going on. Like eBird is one that's like very user friendly and to be honest, at times maybe a little too user friendly, to the point where some of that data may not be as reputable as it might, it should be. Um, there's a lot of nuances and a lot of bird IDs, and I've seen a lot of not or incorrect eBird postings over the years, and so I kind of wonder about that sometimes. But another one right now that's totally volunteer based is the Pennsylvania Bird Atlas, the third Bird Atlas. It's been running for a year now, actually, as of January. Um, and there's it's a kind of a standardized effort across the state, to assess those breeding populations. And new to this one is overwintering populations as well. So we just came off of, I think it was like it was like December 15th through, or no, December 1st through February 28th was like the winter window. And it involved like I would go out and do like 1 hour timed surveys in a designated block that they split the state up into all these blocks kind of arbitrarily. Um, I think they're like 9 square miles. I just drew a grid on the state, and you get a block that you go to, and you have to do like XYZ types of effort and like keep it very standardized. And so like me being into the science aspect, and to the point where I feel like I can contribute to that data like accurately. That's a step that I've taken to like push myself in the community more. And then there are other people that have done so, but then there's also people that feel like they're not at that point with like trusting themselves to enter the data in a standardized way or to, be accurate enough in their IDs and things like that. And so, yeah, I think there's many levels that you can take it to, and some people run with it in, the photography direction, some people run with it in the science direction, and some people kind of do a blend of all of it. And I like to think I do a blend of all of it. I'm not the best at any one of them. But I enjoy what I'm doing. So yeah.